Hi, everyone. This is Mike, Ashley, and Katie from Time to Pet, and thank you for joining us for today's Advanced Reporting webinar. We will be getting started with our webinar in just a couple minutes, but before we begin, a few announcements. Today, we'll be doing a deep dive into all of the various reports available to you in Time to Pet. We will be playing 3 short videos and doing a Q&A after each one. Our first video is on financial reports, then schedule, client, and staff reports, and lastly, time, mileage, pay, and tip reports. If you have any questions during the videos, you can ask those in the chat section on the far right side of the screen, and we'll spend about 5 minutes or so answering as many questions as we can at the end of each related video. If you have any specific questions related to your Time to Pet account, please email us at support@timetopet.com so we can take a closer look. At the end of the last video, we will be opening up the floor for an extended question and answer session to touch on any questions we did not get to answer. We'll also be sending a follow-up email after the webinar to answer any additional questions you may have and with a link to the recorded version. We are going to give everyone a minute or two to get settled. Thanks again for joining us. Hi everyone, Mike from Time to Pet here again. We are almost ready to get started, but for anyone who has just joined us, today's Advanced Reporting webinar will include 3 videos on all of the various reports available to you in Time to Pet. After each video, we will open the floor for a Q&A session related to that specific video. If you have any questions during or after the videos, you can ask those in the chat section on the far right. Let's go ahead and get started with financial reports.
Time to Pet offers a number of different reports on your business data. This demo will cover each of the report options in detail so you know what each report does and how to use it. The majority of the reports can be found in the reporting section of the main menu. The first type of reports here are the financial reports. There are 3 types of financial reports in Time to Pet: revenue, payments, and sales. Each of these reports uses different financial data from your company and therefore in most cases will generate a different total. Revenue reports use invoice line items as their underlying data source. Invoice line items can be services, packages, extra pet fees, holiday, after hours or weekend fees, or custom line items. Revenue reports will apply any invoices prorated discount to those line items. So for example, if a $20 line item was on an invoice with a 10% discount, this would be reported as $18 of revenue. Revenue reports do not include taxes or tips. Since the revenue reports are based on invoice line items, when you select a date range for the report, this will capture all invoice line items with dates within that range. For services and extra fees attached to services, their line item's date would be the date the service is scheduled for. And for packages, their line item's date would be the date the package was added to the client's account. The date or due date of the invoice that a line item was on is not taken into account on the revenue report. And if or when the invoice was paid is also not considered. The segmentation dropdown in the revenue reports allows you to run reports on just a segment of clients with a certain entry in one of the fields on their client profile. By default, you'll have the option to run a report on a specific zip code or referral source. But if you go to your client field settings, you have the option to make any client field a customer segment. For example, if you make the city field a customer segment, you'll be able to generate reports on revenue from each specific city you serve. As you can see, there are many different revenue reports you can run. Each looks at your revenue data slightly differently. We sometimes get questions about why the totals from two or more of these reports don't match. This is due to the fact that not all of these reports use the exact same data set. For example, one report might be looking at all types of revenue, while another might just be looking at revenue from services, while excluding revenue from other sources, like packages or custom line items. The first and most commonly run revenue report is revenue over time. This report will include revenue from all types of invoice line items, services, extra fees, packages, and custom line items within the date range you select. If you select a date range of 45 days or less, the chart will be broken down by day. If you select a date range of more than 45 days, the chart will be broken down by month. Revenue by segment over time will report on revenue from each of your customer segments. This makes it easy to compare revenue from different zip codes, referral sources, or any other customer segments you have. Revenue by custom line item will report on just the revenue from custom line items that you've added to client invoices. Services over time will report on the revenue from just specific services you select. You can select up to 3 services for this report. If you run the report on multiple services, each will have its own total and graph color so you can easily compare them. This report will include revenue from extra fees that are attached to services, in addition to the revenue from the services themselves. Revenue by service will report on all revenue from service line items and the extra fee line items attached to those services. This report is broken down by service type and also includes a count of the number of services invoiced for each type. Note that this count includes all service line items, regardless of status, so it will include scheduled and completed services, as well as canceled services, including services that were canceled at no charge. The count would not include services that are part of a package, because on a package invoice, the package as a whole is the line item and not the individual services. Packages over time will report on the revenue from just specific packages you select. You can select up to 3 packages for this report. If you run this report on multiple packages, each will have its own total and graph color so you can easily compare them. The dates used for this report would be based on the date the package was added to a client's account, as that is the date used for package line items. This report would include revenue from package line items only, and would not include any extra fees that were attached to services on packages. Revenue by package will report on all revenue from all packages. This report is broken down by package type and also includes a count of the number of packages invoiced for each type. Like the packages over time report, the dates used are the date the packages were added to client accounts, and extra fees that were attached to services on packages are not included in the revenue totals. Client revenue over time will report on all revenue from one specific client you select. Total client revenue reports on all revenue broken down by client. Only clients that have invoice line items within the date range you select will be included, so you may notice that not all of your clients are listed. The report will include both active and inactive clients who had an invoice line item within your selected date range. You may notice some clients listed as $0 revenue. These would be clients who had invoice line items within the date range, but the total of those line items is 0. These might be, for example, clients who had all their services canceled at no charge. client revenue by service, reports on service line items, and extra fees attached to those line items for a specific client you select. The report is broken down by service type and includes a count for each service. Top clients will list the names and revenue totals for the 50 clients with the most revenue for the date range you select. Referrals will show the number of new clients that came from each of your referral sources within the date range you select. The report includes both active and inactive clients, and the date used is the date the client was added to Time to Pet. Staff revenue reports on revenue broken down by staff member. Note that this is not the amount paid to staff, but the amount of revenue from client invoice line items that were assigned to staff members. This report will only include revenue from line items that are assigned to a staff member, which would just be services and extra fees, as packages and custom line items cannot be assigned to staff. This report will include both active and inactive staff members, as long as they have an invoice line item assigned to them within the date range you select. Staff revenue by service reports on service line items and extra fees attached to those services for a specific staff member you select. The report is broken down by service type and includes a count for each service. The next type of financial report is the payments report. The payments report uses the payments recorded in your account as its underlying data source. The date recorded on the payment is considered and not the date or due date of the invoice it is applied to. And the total on the report only includes payments that have been applied to an invoice and does not include open payments received during the date range. You can also run a payment report on just one specific client by selecting them from the dropdown. The main table on the report will list payments that are applied to invoices and the details of each payment, including the payment method and description. The search box at the top of the page can be used to filter the list. For example, you could enter cash to view payments that have the word cash in their description. If you have tax rates set for your company, the next table will list each tax rate and the details of payments collected with those tax rates. Note that only payments that included tax will be listed here, so adding the totals here may not necessarily add up to the total at the top of the page. If there are any open payments from the date range you selected, the next table will list the details of those open payments. If there were any refunds given during the date range you selected, they'll be listed next. Note that the dates here are based on the date the refund was issued and not the date of the original payment. The last table you might see on this report is applied credits. This will list any payments that were applied to invoices from a client's credit balance. If you have the gift cards feature enabled, there will also be an option to run a gift cards report in the Payments Report tab. This will report on any gift cards sold during the date range you select and will also show how much money is left on each card. The report will also show you the total number of gift cards sold during the date range you select, the average gift card value, and the combined total value of all those gift cards. The final financial report is the sales report. The sales report considers invoices as a whole. You can choose whether the report includes all invoices or just paid invoices, and whether the report is based on invoice date or due date. Unlike the other financial reports, the sales report does not generate a table or chart within Time to Pet, but instead generates a CSV file that you can download and then open with the spreadsheet application of your choice. The downloaded report includes columns for the details of each invoice, and the last row will show a total for each column. If sales tax is collected, there will also be a section that reports on the total tax collected for each of your tax rates.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for the first video. We will be spending a few minutes now answering questions on that first video. As a reminder, if we don't get to your question here, we will be doing an extended Q&A at the end of the last video, and we will also be sending along a follow-up email after the presentation with a link to the recorded webinar and answers to all of the questions that are asked. First question was about the revenue reports, revenue over time, and does that include tips? So tips and taxes are not included on any revenue reports. The revenue reports are based solely on invoice line items. If you're looking for data on tips and taxes, we would definitely recommend using the payments report, or even better, using the sales report. A question about voided invoices and whether those are included in those revenue reports. So voided invoices are not included in revenue reports. There was a request to demonstrate how to add a customer segment on a specific search item. So unfortunately, this demo does not include a screen share component, but we can most certainly send along detailed instructions via follow-up email. But just as a heads up, you can mark fields as a customer segment by navigating to the settings section of TimeToPet and then going to client fields. Each one of your client fields will have a little checkbox that is labeled customer segment. If you check that, then you will be able to use that particular field as a customer segment field. A question came up about the ability to pull a report on billable hours. So we will most certainly be covering this in the time reports video. So just hold on and we will most certainly address this one. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a quick minute to get your questions entered, and then we'll go in and answer the rest of these. A question about how to report credit card fees in revenue. So the revenue reports are based on those invoice line items, and they don't take into account payment data, including credit card fees. But if your TimeToPet account is connected to a credit card processor, you have access to either WePay reports or TimeToPet payments reports. All of those reports, which can be found under the invoicing section, will give you a complete breakdown of all of the credit card fees associated with each individual payment, and then we'll bundle those together and show you all credit card fees associated with each payout or deposit into your bank account. All right, at this time, we're going to be starting the second video on schedule, client, and staff reports. As a reminder, you can ask any questions you may have in the chat section, and we will answer these at the end of the video. If we missed any questions, we will be answering those at the end of the last video as well.
The next type of reports in the reporting section are the schedule reports. Note that many of the schedule reports have multiple columns that may not all fit on your screen. So you may want to minimize the menu and/or hide the sidebar for more space. The first schedule report is the pending requests report. This report shows you client requests and how long it takes for your company to process them. You can choose to use either the date the requests were received or the date they were processed to run the report. It gives you an average processing time for those requests and lists the details of each request and its processing time in the table below. The pending request volume report reports on the number of requests your company receives. It can be based on the dates the requests were received, so you can see when most of your requests come in, or the date the requests are for, so you can see what dates are most popular for your clients to request. The report includes a line graph showing the request volume over time, as well as a chart that shows the volume of requests based on day of the week. The canceled visit report reports on the number of cancellations your company had within a given date range, as well as the lost revenue from those cancellations. You can choose whether you want to exclude deleted events from the report or include deleted events from voided invoices or all deleted events. Note that this report does not include or calculate lost revenue from template events that were deleted before the template was approved or events that were part of a rejected template. It is also unable to calculate lost revenue for canceled events that were part of a package. On this report, total events is the total number of scheduled, canceled, and completed events. Canceled events is the total number of canceled events. Cancel percentage is the total percentage of events that have been canceled. For example, if there are a total of 10 events, of which one has been canceled, the cancel percentage will be 10%. And lost revenue is the amount of revenue that has been lost due to cancellations. This is the sum of revenue at full price minus the revenue billed for the cancellation. For example, if a visit is $25 at full price and you charged your client $10 for the cancellation, $15 would be calculated as the lost revenue. The report includes a line graph showing the volume of total events and total canceled events, as well as a table listing cancellations and lost revenue by client to help you determine which clients are making the most cancellations and costing you the most lost revenue. The Incomplete Visits report will give you a list of all visits with either a scheduled start time or check-in time that is in the past, which have not yet been marked as completed. You can also mark all of these past incomplete services as completed using the Mark All Past Incomplete as Complete button on this report. Note that this will mark all events that have a start time in the past as completed, so it is best to do this at the end of a day to ensure that events that are in progress or late to start do not get mistakenly marked as completed. The Printable Schedules report can be used to generate a PDF or CSV version of the schedule for any staff members for any date range. In the Columns for Schedule Reports section, you can customize what information you want included on the report, including any of the fields from the client or pet profiles. After generating the report, click Download to download the report as a CSV file or Print to generate a printer-friendly PDF version of the report. The upcoming first/last visits report will show you all visits with a start time in the future that are either the first or last visit on an invoice. You can choose whether you want the report to show both first and last visits, first visits only, or last visits only. The report will show you the details of the first and last visits, including a link to view the invoice they're on, a link to view them on the scheduler calendar, and the trip range, which is the dates of the first and last visits of the invoice they are on. The visits report shows the details of visits within a specified date range. By default, the report will show all visits within the date range you select, but it also offers a number of options for filtering by a specific client, staff member, service, or event status. The report includes revenue totals for the visits broken down by the revenue from services, extra pet fees, and holidays, and also includes a total of what staff were paid for the visits. The visits report does not include revenue from packages or custom line items, so the revenue totals here might not add up to be equal to your revenue total from the Revenue Over Time report or one of the other reports from the financial reporting section. And the report does not include staff pay from tips or custom line items, so the staff paid total may not match the total from running a pay report. Below the totals, there is a table listing the details of each visit, including the scheduled date and time of the visit, the duration if the visit is complete and time tracking was done, the client the visit is for, the assigned staff member, the type of service, the status of the visit, scheduled, completed, or canceled, the service revenue, extra pet fees, holiday fees, and staff pay. The visit volume report will tell you the number of scheduled and completed visits your company has within a specified date range. It does not include canceled visits. There is a line graph showing the visit volume over time, as well as a chart showing visit volume by day of the week. The next section in reporting is for client and staff reports. These will generate lists of clients or staff members based on the filters you select. Click the Add Filters button to select a filter. As you can see, there are a variety of filters available, sorted into categories: General, Invoicing and Payments, and Scheduling. Multiple filters can be combined together to further customize your report. When two or more filters are selected, an additional drop-down will appear. Or filters will find clients that match at least one of the filters, and the AND filters option will find clients that match all of the filters. After generating your report, you can use the Export Filtered Clients button to download the client data for the clients that were included in your report. Staff reports work the same way as client reports, with just a different set of filters specific to staff.
It's now answering questions on this video. As a reminder, if we don't get to your question here, we will be doing an extended Q&A at the end of the last video. So if you have any questions, please feel free to enter those into the chat section now. So there was a couple of questions or comments about just kind of COVID and its impact on pet sitters and dog walkers, and just wanted to definitely let you guys know that I think what we've seen from our customers during this time has made us incredibly proud to work with such amazing business owners, such amazing people who've been able to weather a storm that I don't think anyone could have ever imagined. So here at Time to Pet, it means a lot to us to know that we have such incredible customers, such amazing people who are doing such really incredible work and just persevering through things that none of us could have ever imagined. Here at Time to Pet, we've been working hard on making Time to Pet a little bit easier to use, whether that's the canceled report or the gift cards or anything like that. If you have any suggestions for us or any kind of thoughts, please feel free to email us at support@timetopet.com. We most certainly understand that these are incredibly trying times, and we're here for you. So if you have any questions or kind of suggestions, like I said, just let us know at support@timetopet.com. All right, at this time, I think we're going to start the last video on time, mileage, pay, and tip reports. As a reminder, you can ask any questions you may have in the chat section, and we will answer these at the end of this video. Let's go ahead and get started with the last video here.
The next set of reports in the reporting section are the time and mileage reports. Note that some of the reports here will only be available to you if your company has hourly time tracking and mileage tracking enabled. The billable hours report determines how efficiently staff are being billed or scheduled. This report shows you the amount of time your staff are spending at visits out of the total time clocked in for shifts. It also calculates the amount of time they spend traveling in between visits by subtracting the amount of time they spend at visits from the total time they spent clocked in. Overall efficiency is calculated by dividing the total time spent at visits by their total time clocked in. Below the report summary is a table showing the data for each of their individual shifts. The reliability report allows you to, at a glance, find staff who are habitually unreliable. Reliability is shared across 3 factors that you configure. Late, which is when staff start a visit a certain number of minutes after the scheduled start time. Cut short visits, which are visits that have check-in and out duration of a certain number of minutes less than the scheduled duration. And long visits, which are visits that have a check-in and out duration of a certain number of minutes greater than the scheduled duration. Note that the duration the cut short and too long visits are based on is the mobile app timer duration of the primary service and not the scheduled start and stop times of the visits. The first table on the report is a summary of each staff's reliability. The summary report contains average times cut short, average time late, and average time too long. This is an average of only the visits that are considered by you to be late, short, or too long. For example, consider 3 visits that are late by 3 minutes, 6 minutes, and 8 minutes. If you only consider visits late, if the sitter arrives 5 minutes late or later, the average time late is calculated as 7 minutes, which is the average of the 6 and 8 minute late visits, since the 3-minute late visit is less than 5 minutes late. Below the summary table is a table showing the reliability data for each individual visit. The scheduled visit report provides a summary and detailed breakdown of all time worked by your staff at just their scheduled visits. There are 4 different methods to determine the time for each visit. Scheduled time is the time that the visit is actually scheduled for on the calendar. Service default duration is the time that is configured as the primary service's default duration. Mobile app timer is the time that is configured as the primary service's mobile app timer duration. And event check-in and out times are the actual times the staff members checked in and out of each visit. Below the report summary is a table showing the duration details of each visit. The time off report will list all time off scheduled within a specific date range. It will list the staff member the time off is for, the start and end of the time off, the type of time off, one day, multi-day, or weekly recurring, and any notes that were entered with the time off. The time shifts report calculates the total hours each staff was clocked in during a specified date range. At the bottom of the report, there is a list of all time shifts that were used to calculate the total hours. Here you can also manually edit a time shift using the Edit button, or view the GPS check-in and check-out points for a shift by clicking on the Details button. If there is no Details button for a shift, that means that no GPS data was collected for that shift. This could be due to the shift having been added manually, GPS clock in and out being disabled, or the staff member's phone being unable to get a GPS signal at the time of the shift. Note that in regards to filtering on date, only the start time of the shift is taken into account. For example, if a time shift is March 31st at 10 p.m. to April 1st at 6 a.m., this time shift would be included in a March report, but not in an April report. The mileage by date report calculates total distance tracked by each staff member during a specified date range. At the bottom of the report, there is a list of all odometer readings that were used to calculate the total distance. Here you can also manually edit a mileage recording using the Edit button. Like the time shifts report, in regards to filtering on date, only the start time of the mileage is taken into account. The last reports we'll look at are for staff pay and tips. These can be found in the Pay Center rather than in reporting. The pay report will calculate the total already paid and projected to be paid to each staff member for the date range you select. Paid out is any pay that has been included on a pay stub, and projected is any pay for that date range that has not yet been included on a pay stub. These totals include pay for services, tips, and pay stub custom line items. At the bottom of the report, there is a list of all pay stub line items that were used to calculate the paid out total. This list does not include any data for projected. There are 2 date types that can be used to generate the report. Visit date line item would base the dates for the report on the dates the visits are scheduled for, and the line item dates for any custom line items. Pay stub generated date would base the dates for the report on the dates that pay stubs were generated. If this option is selected, no projected values will be calculated. This option can be used when you want to see how much you actually paid staff during a specific time period, assuming you issue paychecks on the same dates you generate pay stubs. For example, since most companies pay their staff after services are completed, services that they do towards the end of December go on the first pay stub they receive in January of the new year. If you run a pay report for 2019 using the visit date line item option, you're getting a total for the visits they did in 2019, regardless of when they got paid for them. If you run the same report using the pay stub generated date, you're getting the total of all their pay stubs that were generated in 2019. This would include visits that they did at the end of December of 2018, which were included on their first pay stub from January 2019, and would not include any services that they did at the end of December of 2019 that they weren't paid for until January 2020. The tip report calculates the total tips received from clients or paid out to staff within the date range you select. Only tips that have been dispersed are included in the report. One of the most important settings to note on this report is the date to use dropdown. This determines whether the report is based on the dates or due dates of the client invoices that the tips were on, or the date that the tips were dispersed to or paid to staff. We commonly see admins trying to run a tip report to compare the tips they've paid out on staff pay stubs, getting different totals because the dates they're using on the tip report are based on client invoices rather than staff pay stubs. There are 3 types of tip reports that can be run. Tips over time will generate a total for the tips within a date range and a bar graph of all tips by date. It can also be run on just one staff member at a time. Tips by staff will calculate the total tips for each staff member within the date range you select. And tips by client will calculate the total tips given by each client within your selected date range.
Hi, everyone, and thank you again for watching the 3rd video. We're now going to open the floor for an extended Q&A on reporting in TimeToPet. Again, please feel free to ask your questions in the sidebar. And as a reminder, we will be following up with an email that answers all questions that were asked and includes a link to the recorded webinar. To get started, let's answer some of those questions that came in on that last video. So first up is a question about a business that doesn't have any additional staff members, and can they track themselves? So the question is, or the answer is absolutely, especially if you plan on hiring and adding additional staff members in the future. We definitely recommend enabling those time tracking tools. That way you can understand them before you hire your additional staff. And even if you don't plan on hiring additional staff, you can definitely use it to track yourself, just to track your efficiency. A question about why the billable hours report would not be showing up in someone's account. So that's a great question. And in order to get the billable hours report to show up, you'll first have to enable the hourly time tracking. And that can be done by navigating to settings and then staff settings. And then there's a time and mileage section right there. So in time and mileage, you can enable the hourly time tracking tools. A question about services for staff breaks and commute times, and is there a better way to do that than by scheduling events? So if you don't want these particular services or times to be included in the billable hours report, then we would definitely recommend that you have your staff members clock in and clock out before they take their break, and then clock in again after their break is over. So most certainly using that tool should help there and not scheduling events for those particular times. So a few other questions that came in during the demo that we wanted to answer. So there was a question on just kind of the purposes of a lot of the reports and how these reports are used. So here at TimeToPet, one of the things we learned very early on is that even though all of our customers do relatively the same things with pet sitting and dog walking services, everyone runs their business very differently. And that means a lot of different things, including that our customers are looking for different types of reports. So we would not expect your single business to use all of our reporting tools. Instead, we've built a lot of reports that hopefully you can find a handful of them that are really meaningful to your business and what you're looking to accomplish. So for example, some of our customers are really focused on the volume of visits that they're completing. They're really kind of high volume operators, and they want to do as many dog walks as possible. So those particular companies may use a different report than a small business that's really focused on driving revenue and offering kind of a premium service. So they're more concerned with maybe revenue reports than reports that are more focused on visit count. So definitely all of the reports are available to you, but we would expect that you would find a small handful of them that are important to you, your business, and what your goals are. A question about showing the report for credit card fees. So unfortunately, with this demo, the data we're using is just dummy data, and there's not a way to generate lots of dummy data for credit cards and credit card fees and things like that. So we don't have the ability to demonstrate that report here, but most certainly we can reach out to you directly after the demo, the person who asked the question, and we can show you exactly where you would find all of these reports in your account. As a reminder, they can be found in the invoicing section, and if you're connected to WePay, there's a sub-tab that will say WePay reports, and if you're connected to Time to Pet payments, there'll be a sub-tab that says payments, and you can see all of your reports right from there. So a question came in about voided invoices, and if there is a way to see lost revenue related to voided invoices. So lost revenue from voided invoices can be included in the cancellations report. There's going to be an option on that report to include deleted events from voided invoices. So you would want to just make sure that you click that, and then you would be able to see lost revenue related to voided invoices, not just those canceled events. A question about a potential report in the future to see revenue over time, but really kind of focused on profit. That would be the revenue that you're making for your business minus what you've paid to your team members. So we've always been sort of hesitant to run a report like that because a lot of our customers would just kind of assume that that's the profit from those particular events. But of course, there's a lot of additional fees and expenses that a pet sitting and dog walking business has that are not being tracked in Time to Pet, whether that's your website or advertising or marketing. So we may add a report like that in the future, but we'll just have to be really mindful that we explain that this is not your pure profit and loss. This is just kind of your revenue minus what you've paid to your team members, and you should most certainly factor in any other business expenses into this data. But definitely something we can consider. All right, everyone, that's about all the time we have for today. I wanted to thank everyone again for joining us for today's advanced reporting webinar. We really appreciate you taking some time with us. Again, if you have any questions after this session, you can always contact us by sending an email to support@timetopet.com. As I mentioned, we'll also be following up via email with a recording of this webinar and to answer any questions that we may have missed. That email will also include answers to all of the questions that we did address during the demo. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks again, everyone. We really appreciate your time. Please stay safe. We hope that you, your business, and your communities are safe and healthy. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please let us know. Thanks, everyone.